Welcome to a new episode of the Straight Wrestling Voices of the Indies podcast. I'm your host Morbo, and with me, as always, everyone's favorite US independent wrestling fan, Sebastian.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Morbo, and welcome everyone to this week's episode of Straight Wrestling Voices of the Indies. And we have a very special guest today because our guest is one of the most important managers in independent wrestling in the US. He's known for his work for promotions like Beyond Wrestling, for promotions like CHIKARA, and many, many more. And we are very happy to have him as our guest today. And with that, thank you for taking the time and welcome, Sidney Bakabella.
I'm the most important person, the most important manager for sure. In America, like in Germany, anywhere. Yugoslavia loves me.
So, for the few people who don't know who you are, who is Sidney
They're
Bakabella?
idiots. Those people are stupid. I mean, that's all I can say. Those few people that don't know me, well, then they don't have cable television. They don't have AM radio. They don't have anything. Look, I am the manager of world-class Channing Thomas, the top attraction in independent wrestling. And, for years and years and years now, I have made huge attractions. If you watch CHIKARA, you know that I manage Devastation Corporation. I'm the only manager that managed a King of Trios team as well as the Campeones de Parejas. And that's a lot to say because I'm not Spanish.
How would you describe your philosophy as a manager, and how would you describe the role that you play for your clients?
Money. Look, all right. Every manager, right? You look at any independent wrestling card, and if there's a manager, someone always calls them the manager of champions, right? Like that's the thing. And my thinking is always, well, anybody can really be a champion on the independents. So if you're managing the independent wrestling champion, what have you really done? So I get these people ready to be stars on television. I get these, you look at Blaster McMassive now on TV, all these people that I've worked with over the years, even behind the scenes, if I wasn't with them on and in the ring, the people I work with behind the scenes, they go on to become stars. You listen to me, you make money. That's the thing. I don't care about managing independent wrestling champions. My guys travel. You can't find another manager on the indies right now that's getting flown out everywhere. You can't do that. And I do that now exclusively with Channing Thomas, because he's going to be a huge star. Like we see it happening before our eyes, and it's beautiful.
Can you tell us a little bit how is the process of becoming your client?
I gotta like you. Like that's the big thing. So Channing Thomas, I saw Channing Thomas, and we were on a card together in a VFW, and I'd known Channing from other events, but I get to talking to him. And I gave him bad advice. And it's advice that you shouldn't do. But I wanted to see if he listened. So, and would apply the advice. And he did. And I'm like, okay, so this guy's coachable. And then it's, okay, let's come up with a plan. Let's see how motivated you are. Because there's a lot of work to being world-class Channing Thomas. Like everybody, the natural skills are there. You can see that. But there's a lot of refining. There's a lot of training. You've got to work on your wrestling balance. You've got to work on your wrestling technique. This is the guy that wakes up at 4:30 in the morning and drinks a glass of unborn virgin goat milk just to get his day started before he goes to the gym. He's in the gym 3 times a day. Like this guy is just, he's a machine. And that's the process. I have to see that desire. And then I'm like, okay, we can do something here. And then we get the ball rolling with a lot of networking. Like, hey, Sidney Bakabella will come in, but you've got to bring in this person and I manage him. or her. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm not biased towards the genders, guys, okay? But I see it, and then I do the networking, and I teach them how to do the networking, and I teach them how to do the merchandise, and I teach them how to make money and how to present themselves as a star to get noticed. And then they get noticed, and boom, everything works out.
Where does your nickname, the King of Managers, come from?
That actually came from the King of Trios. So I'm the only one that year that when we won, I didn't get a medal. So Blaster McMassive got a medal. Max Smashmaster, Flex Rumble Crunch got a medal. I think Flex Rumble Crunch pawned his medal. I'm not sure. But I didn't get a medal. So I said, you know what? You guys can be the King of Trios. I'll be the King of Managers. And it just turned out. And then we made the WWF King of the Ring logo with the King of Managers. And it just worked out. It was a nickname that stuck for, I don't know, it's been about 10 years now that we've had that.
As you already said, we know you today as the manager of Channing Thomas. But I want to start a bit earlier in the year 2004. What comes to your mind when you hear Totally Tool Wrestling? What can you tell us about this promotion?
I knew it was coming. I knew that one was coming. Look, Totally Tool Wrestling, it blows my mind that anyone even knows what Totally Tool Wrestling is in 2024. And I say that because it started as a joke. I was riding with a buddy who's not even in wrestling. He was my friend. We both loved wrestling. I got into wrestling, and his name was Joe Hero. And Joe he was a fan. He would come to every show with me. We would ride together, and we were just, when you're on the road, those long drives, those 7-8 hour drives, you've got to do something to fill the time. So we came up with just this crazy idea. What if we booked wrestlers and just gave them completely different gimmicks? Who would do what? And there was a wrestler named Stumpy, who nobody knew. Like, I love Stumpy. I think Stumpy is an amazing human being. But Stumpy was an overweight gentleman. And it was, what if we put him in red sweatpants and called him Tubby Hart? Because Teddy Hart was like the big thing in 2004. So that's how it started. And it was like, what if he just does backflips, but can't actually do a backflip? Like, it was essentially the opposite of Teddy Hart. And we laughed. And if we laughed at something, we knew it was good, and we knew that other people would buy into it. And then we're like, why can't we do this? And so we spent a couple of months just coming up with crazy ideas and who would portray them. And then when word got out, wrestlers were coming to us like, I have this idea. And we're like, okay, that would work. Okay, that wouldn't work. And we had no idea what we were doing. We didn't know how to run a wrestling show. If you watch those cards and look for organization of running a wrestling show, you will not see it in the first or second card. By the third one, we were like, okay, we sort of know what we're doing now. And that one was special. But the first couple of shows, we had no idea what we were doing. And we just threw everything out there. And 20 some odd years later, people still bring it up. And it just blows my mind that people enjoyed our stupid ideas, because we still will call each other and text each other and laugh about Bruiser Brady. Like, it's just funny to us.
Let's stay in the 2000s. You've been around some of the best independent wrestlers at that time, especially in IWA Mid-South. What can you tell us about IWA Mid-South between 2004 and 2008?
Yeah, well, the first time I got paid by Ian Rotten, it was when a fan jumped in the ring and I kicked him right in the face and beat him up. And I was always told not to get off of somebody. And I had been working for IWA for about a year at that point for free. I never got a payday. And at the end of that night, Ian Rotten walks over with this big smile, beaming of pride. And he goes, "This is for protecting the business." and he hands me a $20 bill. And at that time, I was getting paid everywhere else, but IWA was special. And it still is special. It's like a rite of passage for a lot of independent wrestlers. Like I still say, you've got to work for Ian Rotten one time. And he doesn't run anymore, but you got to work there once. And, he handed me that $20 bill. So I was like, oh my God, I've made it. Like I'm one of the boys. And, but I got to see and be around so many amazing professional wrestlers. And we can all name drop like AJ Styles, Bryan Danielson, CM Punk. That's fun. But there were so many hidden gems from that early 2000s in the Midwest of the United States. Guys like Jason Dukes, who a lot of people have no idea who Jason Dukes is. Jason Dukes is such a great wrestler. Guys like Josh Abercrombie, who had these amazing matches with Tyler Black. Everybody knows Tyler Black went on to be Seth Rollins, but Josh Abercrombie, you need a dance partner. And those two guys like Merrick Brave, Trick Davis, they were all like just that crew. Even Metalhead Steve Stone, in his own weird way, like he was part of that foundation. And then Ian would bring in, the big names, the Samoa Joes, the Chris Heroes, and, even when he brought in for me, the coolest thing, it was December of 2004. I was the guy tasked with picking up and driving Chris Candido around the Midwest. And, Ian Rotten had a tag match. I think the event was Big Ass Christmas Bash 2004. And the main event, it was Chris Candido and Steve Stone against against Terry Funk and Ian Rotten. And like that, I have this picture, and it's one of the only pictures I ever took. And it's a locker room bench. And it's me in the middle with Terry Funk and Chris Candido on both sides of me. And they're both wearing the Terry Funk tights. Like, people didn't get that experience. And, I got that. I got a lot of the crazy as well. I got New Jack threatening Jim Fannin over his payday. And, I saw a lot of crazy stuff. But I also got a lot of really cool moments that, 20 some odd years later, I still can look back on and be like, okay, that was really cool.
According to Cage Match, you started to work for CHIKARA in 2012 when you did commentary on the show on November 11th, the show called CHIKARA, A Piece of the Action. What are your memories of this show, and maybe also your memories of your commentary work what you did for CHIKARA as a whole?
I have no recollection of that whatsoever. If I did it, I did it. I don't even remember that. I know I actually was the ring announcer for a couple of matches at King of Trios 2008 in Philadelphia. I remember that very vividly. A lot of my cage match stuff, somebody actually just showed me Cage Match about 6 months ago. I had no idea what it was. And to that one person in Germany, I don't know who it is, but I bet you're listening. You said some really mean things about me. You gave me a poor rating. And now I don't like you, okay? Now I can put you on blast, okay? You're wrong. You said you had no use for me. And you're wrong. You have a use for me. But anyways, I have no recollection of doing commentary. I thought that I started in CHIKARA. Well, it was Wrestling is Awesome, which was like the farm league. They had me managing Devastation Corporation, and I, came in, and then they were like, okay, this is really good. Let's put this on the CHIKARA shows, and we debuted at a baseball stadium, and then from there it was King of Trios, where we came out, and it was the craziest thing because we beat up a bunch of teams, and then Demolition comes out And then the powers of pain come out. And we're like, okay, this is they're really pushing us right now. So I guess we're kind of the guys.
You already referred to it. You've referred to Wrestling is Awesome. And it was one of the promotions, like the series of promotions that had their origins within CHIKARA, which were Wrestling is Awesome, Wrestling is Fun, and also Wrestling is Art. As someone who's been involved during that time, how would you describe these like sequel or side promotions of CHIKARA to our listeners who maybe don't know about them?
Yeah, so Mike Quackenbush was this genius of storylines, and it was like these long-term stories with every twist and turn and every nook and cranny you can think of in a wrestling story. But like you watch wrestling now and like the story plays out outside of the bloodline, but like the story plays out in like 4 or 5 months. CHIKARA played out over 3 or 4 years. And Mike Quackenbush had this idea to shut down CHIKARA, but he would run little satellite promotions around the country with CHIKARA people and then a lot of local talent from the area. So every one of these companies spelled out CHIKARA. So it was like wrestling is pool, that was the C. Wrestling is heart, that was H. Wrestling is, I don't know, intense or something. I don't know what they all were, but they all spelled out CHIKARA. And then when CHIKARA shut down, the little pieces were the wrestling is. And then the wrestling is sort of came back and formed CHIKARA. And like they kept the storylines going in these small little satellite promotions. And it was just like on a big picture, you could see why it killed CHIKARA, because CHIKARA was white hot. And they just kill it and make these little CHIKARAs. And they weren't as good because it wasn't CHIKARA. And then when it comes back, it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then it sort of like fizzled out of 5 or 6 months after that. I say that CHIKARA really took a downslide when they moved into the Wrestle Factory. And, it's where CHIKARA died. But, that Wrestle Factory, I always said it wasn't CHIKARA. It was dark, whereas CHIKARA is light. CHIKARA was always bright and it was fun. But this building was dark and like it only had one bathroom. There was no parking. So you saw the houses go down to like 50 people because nobody wanted to go to that building. But it saved CHIKARA a lot of money because everything was done in-house. So it was I see why they did it, but I hated it because it just wasn't the CHIKARA that I loved.
Would you say that these little CHIKARAs, as you refer to them, like these series of promotions, that they had like different identities, or were they pretty similar in what they
were
presented?
all, everything was different to the point where Wrestling is Awesome. I was the booker for Wrestling is Awesome. It was Bryce Remsburg and I booking Wrestling is Awesome, and then Max Smashmaster was booking Wrestling is Awesome. But like that was out of Indiana, I want to say. And Billy Rock, who wasn't even really in CHIKARA, smart guy, nicest human being you'll ever meet, but he was booking Wrestling is Heart, and he wasn't a CHIKARA guy. There was Wrestling is Art. That one was booked by somebody. So, and then Mike sort of oversaw everything just to make sure that the main beats of the CHIKARA story moved on. But like you would get, Tommaso Ciampa at a Wrestling is Art show in Rhode Island. But like the next day was Wrestling is Awesome. You would get 2.0 from Canada that would drive down to New Hampshire and do that card. So it was all completely different, but there was always a big moment that moved the CHIKARA story along. So that way it would keep the interest of all the people, but every show was so different from each other.
During that CHIKARA time, you really got known as a manager, and one stable that definitely comes to mind is the Wrecking Crew, including Max Smashmaster, Blaster McMassive, Oleg the Usurper, Jaka, and Flex Rumble Crunch. What are your thoughts looking back on that stable and your work you did there as a manager?
So I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, because I've heard this from numerous people, including Mike Quackenbush himself. The moment where Oleg the Usurper left the Wrecking, Mike Quackenbush has said that that is the greatest moment in CHIKARA in terms of the pop, in terms of the emotion. Like, I was doing this whole thing where I was scamming Oleg, and, Oleg was too stupid to know. And, it just turned into finally he ripped that contract and gave me the off with your head. That moment was a Wrecking Crew moment. We also, there's a moment where we killed Dragon. We had so many cool moments. One of my favorite human beings, and I haven't talked to him in years, I've fallen out of touch with him, is Jaka, Johnny Mangle. I believe he lives down in Florida now, and he's a dad. But he was always one of my favorite guys to manage, because up until that point, I never managed anyone shorter than me. And I'm really old school with how I think about pro wrestling. So I'm always supposed to be smaller than the guy I manage, no matter what. And Jocko was, my size, maybe an inch shorter. And I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. And it made me work a different way. So now I, was working with a guy much smaller. So my mannerisms were different. But when you put us all together, it was visually stunning, because you had Devastation Corporation and Oleg that were huge. You had Jaka that was this island savage, which, by the way, the whole story was I was supposed to have found him on Craigslist, but that never played out. And then there's me standing there in the middle, and it was supposed to be this 1980s looking group in this world of comic books. And it really worked because you had ants, you had ice cream, you had princesses, you had all of this crazy stuff. And then right in the middle, you had 80s pro wrestlers. And it was like, okay, this is so different. It's awesome. And then all of us can work. So that made it even better, was we were getting in there with these ants and these ice creams and everything else, and they can work on top of it. When the bell rings, it was a good wrestling match with emotion. It wasn't just about doing moves. And, we gave them a bit of everything in our 15-minute segment. And the fans to this day still appreciate what we did for CHIKARA and for their fandom. Last night, I was at a birthday party, and I'm talking to just some dude, and I'm like, oh, where are you from? And he said he's from Pennsylvania. I'm like, oh, okay, where? And he mentions that. I'm like, oh, I go down to the Lehigh Valley a lot. And it turns out this guy, who I had no idea who he was at a CHIKARA event in 2015 that I was on, and he remembered me. So we resonated with people, and that's so freaking cool.
The Wrecking Crew existed between 2013 and 2015, and during that time period in 2014, there was something in CHIKARA called the Flood, which was something where the Wrecking Crew members were a part of, besides countless others. How would you explain this and its impact at the time to our listeners?
I don't know. I still to this day don't know. This was part of that, when they were closing down CHIKARA for a little while to bring it back. And this was all Mike's story. So the Flood was essentially a group of villains that consisted of a bunch of groups of smaller groups of villains throughout CHIKARA's history. We were the most recent group. And it was led by this guy, Deucalion, who would essentially kill people. It's still to this day the only wrestling company I've ever worked for where the characters actually died. And it's something that's you just don't see because CHIKARA was special like that. But essentially, we were responsible for closing CHIKARA and then bringing it back. Now, to be honest, I've never said this anywhere, but I would have rather the Wrecking Crew be part of the CHIKARA side and help save CHIKARA, but it wasn't our story. We did what we were told. And I felt like at that point was where we got lost with everyone else. There were so many characters in the flood that we're just part of a group, but we were up until that point the main group. And not for nothing, we were doing great houses and selling a lot of tickets and merchandise for the company. So to put us with another big group just didn't help us. It helped it helped the story, but that story is what kind of killed CHIKARA for real. So, that and other things, but that led to the smaller houses. So I never loved the flood. There was one day we had to sit in a car in a parking lot for 5 hours because we had to do a round, and we're just like, oh, this kind of sucks. I want to have a match, and. Yeah, it just wasn't. That wasn't my favorite part of CHIKARA. After that was great. Before that was great. That little time, didn't love it.
Since 2019, many people associate you especially with Beyond Wrestling, and you started doing commentary there on the first episode of Beyond Uncharted Territory on June 12th, 2019. Can you tell us a bit about the experience and maybe also how important the start of Uncharted Territory was for independent wrestling at that time?
Yeah, there wasn't anything like this. It was uncharted territory, it's exactly what it was. It was an independent running weekly TV on a larger platform. It wasn't there. Were there companies running every week? Absolutely. Did they have a platform like Beyond did? No, they did not. And, so let's rewind a little bit. In 2014, Drew Cordero booked me for a card, and I told him I would never work for him again because that card went 6 hours and it was just a mess. And I'm like, I will never work for you again. And you can actually go and find Devastation Corporation wrestling for Beyond Wrestling, but Sidney Bakabella is not there. And I'm like, I will never work for you again. So Drew and I talked, and he's like, this is what I have going on. And he led with everything's going to be 2 hours or under. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. And he stuck to that. And Drew treats me great. I have a great relationship with Drew, but it's so important because it gave a lot of people a platform that would have never gotten one. And he was also bringing in big names on the indies at the time. So everyone was able to get a piece of that pie. I was there just to do commentary, and Drew knew I could do commentary. I hate doing commentary. I just don't like it. But everybody's like, no, you're really good at it. You get everything over that needs to be gotten over. And I don't know, it's just not really what I enjoy doing in wrestling. But I did it because I wanted to be a part of it because I knew that was really cool. And then it turned into Wrestling Open and, whatever they're doing now coming up, hey, good for you. I'm not really a part of it anymore. But I appreciate what we did with the early weekly TVs to give these guys a platform. A lot of people used my commentary to put out highlight videos to get noticed in other places because I would pick up on such little things and blow it up and make it the emphasis of my commentary because no other commentator was going to pick up the little nuances that I would and really emphasize that. And I knew that. So it really helped. But I was just weaseling my way into managing.
You were a part of all 3 seasons of Uncharted Territory that were hosted by Beyond Wrestling. Do you have any favorite memories of these 3 seasons?
So this was I for some reason, and this is just a human character flaw of me. I don't remember the good stuff. I remember the bad stuff. During the pandemic, I remember watching Matt Tremont. No, it wasn't Matt Tremont, but it was at Matt Tremont's school at the H2O building. And we were running these secret shows. And recording 8 episodes and releasing all of it. And I remember it was Matthew Justice against someone else. And I don't remember who the other person was. And the match started after midnight. And it was this crazy hardcore match. And I just remember saying, I feel like I'm watching a sniff video right now. And I feel like someone is just about to die. It was uncomfortable, and that's what they wanted. It was great, but it was, just insane. But there are so many, I look at Waves and Curls. Are you guys familiar with Waves and Curls?
Yes, we are.
Right, Waves and Curls, very popular team in Germany. They're actually Germany's favorite tag team, I was told. But I remember Waves and Curls. I knew them from just the independent scene in New England. And I saw they were on and they were winning in that tag team discovery gauntlet thing. And I knew as soon as that crowd saw them and felt that energy of Waves and Curls on their entrance, that they were going to be everybody's favorite wrestlers. And they were. And then the next week they win again. And before I'm talking to them about promo that they're going to cut afterwards. And I'm like, just be yourself. You are so happy to be here right now. Talk about how hard you've worked. Talk about, just the sacrifice. And they did. And, that crowd to this day, they love Waves and Curls. Whenever they come out, there's still all of that energy. The Whitney Houston, just everything about them. Waves and Curls is one of my favorite tag teams, and I really wish that they were booked everywhere, so that way the people can just feel the energy, and they can work too. They're good workers. So if you're listening to this, everybody book Waves and Curls. They're awesome.
You already mentioned, of course, Channing Thomas in the introduction and how you met him and what do you see in him. And Channing Thomas is also a member of your stable of the Bakabella family. How would you describe the Bakabella family? What does it stand for? What does it represent?
Well, the Bakabella family, that we're just all friends. Kathleen, Teddy Goods, Channing, and myself, even though the Bakabella family is now split up, we are no more. But during that time, we were just 4 friends that were coming up with ideas. And at the time, every little thing was clicking. So no matter what we did, it was working. And I'll say it, we gave Beyond Wrestling the best segment they've ever had with that wedding. If you've seen that wedding, that was so much work, so much stress. And I'm just, putting it all together. It was one of the few times I asked everybody to get to the building an hour before call time so we can rehearse. I don't rehearse anything, but I'm like, it is a wedding. We should rehearse. So, we did. And thank God we did. It was just magical. And, we rode that until we couldn't anymore. Teddy Goods, he had a baby. Well, his wife had a baby. Teddy Goods did not have a baby, but his wife did. And we sort of knew that it was coming to an end. Teddy wasn't going to be around as much. He was putting a lot of emphasis into his events, which are amazing, by the way, called Live Pro Wrestling. Think of it as like an all-star New England wrestling group. But yeah, so we sort of knew that it was ending. So before it got way too stale, we decided to kill it and, just be done with it. So that way we can move on to different things.
In the last 2 years, you've become more active, not only as a manager, but also as an active competitor in the ring. You've wrestled for promotion. You have wrestled for promotions like Beyond, Limitless, BST, Chaotic Wrestling, Live Pro Wrestling, which you already mentioned, the High Valley Athletics Council, and even more promotions. What has been your favorite match where you have been an active wrestler in the last 2 or 3 years?
It's got to be, and by the way, they put me in the ring because they look at me and they know that I'm on steroids and they can put me on a poster and all the girls will buy tickets to the shows. They know what they've got with me. And I'm in a midlife crisis as well. So I go out there and, I still get in there and, bump and go crazy in there. But I gotta say, there are two that really, really stand out. And, the one that is my favorite was the WLC match that I did with Hornswoggle and American Running. That match was just, it's the greatest match between a manager and a midget you're ever going to see. And we had so much fun. He and I have been friends for over 20 years. And we've always wanted to wrestle each other, and we were going to. And then he got signed by the WWE. So we never had our match. And then we finally got to do it years later. We're both older, but we're both smarter. So we had every smoke and mirror you could think of. And we just had an amazing match. And I beat him not only once, I beat him twice that day. Because I'm a full-size man, and he's not, so I could easily beat him. And then the other match that everyone just loves is myself against Matt Tremont for the IWTV title, where I'm like, oh God, when they pitched me the idea, I'm like, I don't want to bleed, I don't want to do the deathmatch stuff, but let's shock people. And for that 2 minutes that I was the IWTV champion, I was a babyface for 2 minutes. And people were throwing babies in the air. They loved it. Everybody was so happy. And then reality set in and Matt Tremont beat me. But that was probably the easiest match that Matt Tremont has ever had. It was one of the easiest matches I've ever had. And it was all emotion. We were able to take the emotion from every person in that room. We shocked them. We surprised them. We made them laugh. We made them angry. We gave them every emotion in 8 minutes. And it was so crazy that they had to take the intermission there because the match was it was just too much. They were so overwhelmed with feelings that they had to go to intermission right there because we gave them that. And I don't think anyone expects that from me. They expect me to go out there. They expect me to, do the manager wrestling where I either do too much or I don't do anything. And I go out there and I give them enough to let them know, just me selfishly, I want people to know that I'm athletic and that I can do things. But I really want to toy with their emotions. I want you to feel something. And all these promoters, they're like, okay, I want you in a match for me. And, if it makes sense, I'll do it. You mentioned Chaotic. They wanted me as a surprise in their Royal Rumble. And I'm like, well, what the hell am I going to do in a Royal Rumble? I don't want to come in and do the Bushwhacker Luke where I get thrown out because I'm just ripping off the promoter at that point. I did nothing. So instead of that, I had this idea. What if I take a tombstone and I just lay there for 30 minutes? And the promoter thought it was the greatest idea ever. So I get in there, I cut a promo because everybody wants a promo. And I get in there, I take a tombstone, and I just lay in the ring for 30 minutes. And I end up lasting 30 minutes in their Royal Rumble. And everyone, by the time I'm getting thrown out, they're like, no, we thought you were going to win. But like I last 30 minutes in their Rumble. So I give them their money's worth, but I also don't give them too much because I want them to bring me back. I want to show them, hey, I can also do this. I can do this. So it really works out for everyone. And they get a moment like that.
My last question before Morbo will talk to you about what is next for you. Last year, you and Channing Thomas traveled to Red Bank, Tennessee for the first time, where Channing was a part of the Scenic City Invitational. How different or maybe unique was this experience for both of you?
Oh my God, I hadn't been to Red Bank, Tennessee since 1983. And nothing had changed. But it was walking out, and the people believe in pro wrestling still. And that makes my job so much easier because, Sebastian, you're a smart fan. Like, I consider you a smart fan. I work different for you if you're in a crowd of a bunch of smart fans than I would work in Red Bank, Tennessee. So my style is always completely different. And I know what type of crowd that I'm in front of every time. When I come out the second night, and there was a large elderly man that rips his shirt off as I'm walking to the ring and tries to fight me. Oh my God. I'm like, I'm in heaven right now. This is what I want. I want that, the emotion, I want that reaction. And they gave it to me without me having to do anything really. There was like an old lady in the crowd that I told her I was going to take her back to the motel after the card. Like, these people were genuinely angry at me. They hated me. And then the promoter invites me back this year because they want that. They want that craziness. So, the SCI this year, just meeting the fans from around the world, like I hadn't really gotten that since King of Tree was at CHIKARA. Like you were there from Germany. There was a guy from Japan there that like knew me. And it was just so crazy that what I do, I don't know. I think of myself as, local wrestling manager, former Hall of Famer, but none of the kids know me. And I see, guy from Germany knows who I am. This is crazy. Guy from Japan knows who I am. This is crazy. And they all converged in this little strip mall in Tennessee. And it was like a pilgrimage that these wrestling fans made to watch us, and it's so cool. And everyone got together. There was no bad parts of the weekend. Everyone was just happy and excited, and that's pro wrestling. So it was really, really fun just to be a part of that. And then those fans, the yokels down there, there was one kid, he looked like Peter Griffin, and he's just yelling at me, and and I told him I was going to be his new stepdad, and he's just like getting angry, and I'm like, does he know it's a work? I'm like, I don't know. So I just keep going until they leave.
On January 18th, you were managing Channing Thomas when he regained the Limitless World title from Desmond Coates. What are your plans for the title now? Could the championship be defended in other promotions or maybe even other countries?
We would be more than happy, and I think I speak for Channing Thomas when I say this. We would be more than happy to defend that title anywhere in the world, as long as the money's right. But if somebody from Germany thinks they can beat Channing Thomas, just step up. Just book the match. He will go. I don't have to be there. I have a full confidence that Channing Thomas, when he walks into a building, he's going to win whatever match he has. And Desmond Cole, he's good. It took a lot of planning. We weren't expecting Desmond Cole to win at Limitless. So, it took a lot of planning, a lot of money to make that January 18th win happen. But it did. So to answer your question, yeah, he would defend it anywhere around the world. Channing Thomas is available for bookings it's really hard to book him because his schedule is very, very full. But if it happens, and if the stars align, he will be there no matter where it is, defending that title or one of any other titles that he may have.
Channing Thomas and you have been voted most hated for the second year in a row at the 2024 Limitless Wrestling Year End Awards. Is it a goal? Is it a goal of yours to achieve that again this year?
No, I don't want people to hate me. They should love me. They should buy me gifts. They should buy me a car. They should love me for what I do for that town. Like, okay, when I come to Yarmouth, Maine, the money just goes up because the people love me. They spend more money at the gas station buying their gas station food. Like, they should love me. It's not a goal, but fans try to fight me at Limitless Wrestling. Like, it gets a little chaotic. There's a guy, the video went viral where I was talking to his wife very nicely and he got a little jealous and he stands up and tries to fight me and everything else. And I've been in fan fights at Limitless Wrestling. I don't know why they hate me. Other than the only reason I can think, to be honest, is because I'm so good looking. And like, I make the guys a little jealous. Like, the women look at me and, I understand. But, you don't have to worry. I love my wife and, it just, well, I'm not going to do anything. You can all love me. So I think that they should just start loving me more. And I'm going to be the most popular person at Limitless with Channing Thomas this year.
On February 8th, you will be alongside Channing Thomas when he faces Sean Logan in LaSalle, Illinois, as a part of the Dreamwave wrestling show Famous Last Words. What are your thoughts on this match?
Oh, it's a lot of hair. Both of those guys. Well, the three of us in that ring have the best hair in wrestling. Look at that poster. This is the best hair in any poster you've ever seen. Look, Sean Logan, he's sort of an unknown. He was in the Good as Gold Rumble that Channing Thomas won, by the way. So I saw him a little bit. I didn't know that he was going to be wrestling him, so I didn't scout him. But I've been watching Sean's matches. Sean's good, but Sean doesn't have that killer instinct that Channing Thomas has. And Channing Thomas, Sean Logan's a local guy. So he drives in. Channing Thomas and I, we get flown in. We get the hotel. We get the food stipend. We get the driver. We get all of this. So we have to work even harder every time we're there to keep coming back. So we have everything to lose in this. If we lose to Sean Logan, we may not get to go to Chicago. We may not get hot dogs in 2 months. I go out there for the hot dogs. And they may start booking Sean Logan more and not Channing Thomas. So Channing has to keep winning. Channing has to keep putting on great matches at Dreamwave like he always does. He's the top attraction in that territory.
Okay, Mr. Bakabella, that's it. We're at the end of the interview. And as always...
But I got 4 hours worth of things to say. We're done. That's it. All right. We could be... All right.
And as always, the stage is yours. You can plug and promote anything you want.
Anything I want, huh? Well, we plugged a lot of stuff because Dreamwave Wrestling on the 8th, that's where we're going to be. Check them out on the X machine. No, it's not pornography now, okay? It used to be Twitter. Now they call it X. Then it'll be X2, and then it's going to be XXX in a few years, I think. You can find me on there at S. Bakabella. You could find Channing Thomas on there at Chan Thomas, or search up World Class Channing Thomas. We're on all platforms. But you look, what you want to do, I don't want to plug myself. If you're listening to this and you don't go to a lot of independent wrestling, go to independent wrestling. I'm never going to get a job on TV. They hate me. But what I do is the closest thing to that old wrestling that your folks watch, your grandparents watch. And I want to bring it back to that. I don't want to bring it back to that. I want to bring that to 2024. I don't want wrestling to go backwards. I want it to go forwards. So go to your local independents. Have fun. Buy merch. Scream. Yell. Nothing offensive, but go out there and and support these guys, because they're going to be what you see on TV. What your kids watch in 10 years is what's happening right now at these small buildings, and you can be a part of their story. Like they still have Brian Danielson t-shirts from many, many years ago that, he was selling it at the merch table next to other people and next to me. And you can be a part of that story. So go support independent wrestling. That's why we're all here. Like, that's what we live. That's why you're listening right now. Keep supporting it. If you hate something, there's like 50 other indies out there that you can watch and support and love.
It was an absolute honor, an absolute privilege to have such a wise man, such a legend on this podcast. So thank you very much, Mr. Bakabella.
Hey, it was your pleasure, okay? And I'm very wise. I'm very studious. I am very knowledgeable. I like all these adjectives that I say about myself that no one else says about me. I say it about myself because I'm the only one that really knows. No, guys, this was a pleasure. You guys actually did your research. You guys did all your homework. You knew more about me. I didn't even know I did commentary for CHIKARA that early. But look at that. You told me something. You know more about me than I do.
As always, I also want to say thank you to you, Morbo, to you, Florian, and especially to you, Mr. Bakabella. I can just say the same as Morbo said. It was a pleasure. It was an honor to have such a legend on this podcast. And of course, thank you to all our listeners, and I hope you will listen to us in the future. Again, goodbye.